Member Amy Adams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And Mr Speaker, it's the first time I've had an opportunity to congratulate you on your new role. It's very nice to have you in the chair this morning. Sir, I rise to take a call on the second reading of the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Bill, and I guess I want to start where I left off in my first reading contribution, which is just to go back to the fact that this bill is all about what it says in Clause 3, the Purpose Clause. It's about providing a mechanism and a framework of powers that are going to be sufficient to allow our Canterbury communities to respond to and recover from these two, arguably three or more devastating earthquakes that have ripped through our province. And, sir, they provide a framework that, of necessity, sets up a balance between timely, effective, and I'm not afraid to say quick, hopefully, although that's a relative term, response to this matter, while ensuring we do engage and involve and bring our communities with us. Now, through the course of the Select Committee process since Tuesday night through yesterday, I know that there was one submitter who was very concerned that some people may feel that those two things, a quick and timely response and involving the community, were mutually exclusive. I've never thought that was the case. I don't think anyone does think they are the case. I've always been of the view that actually you can have a quick, timely and focused response while still bringing your community along with you and involving them in the process. But we do have to acknowledge, sir, and accept, if we're going to make our way through this, that involvement isn't going to mean agreement of everyone. And if anyone goes into this process thinking that if they, at the end of the day, don't get the outcome that they thought it should have been, the process has failed or hasn't been democratic or hasn't listened to the community, then we're all setting ourselves up to fail. And so my plea to everyone engaged in this process, be they community leaders, the public of Canterbury, central government, elected representatives, anyone, is to accept and be very clear from the outset that necessary and absolutely central process of engagement is going to leave people still feeling that they're not happy with the outcome. Much has been said about the great work that's been done in Waimakariri and Selwyn districts since the 4th of September, and I concur, it has been great work. But even in those provinces, there are people right now who still don't think that the processes and the agreements that have been reached are right and will grizzle and tell you that it should have gone a different way. That is going to happen. And the trick to this, sir, in my view, the trick to this balancing is working out how and when you draw the line under that process of listening and engaging and get into the making decisions and making things happen state. And I have no doubt at all that that process of defining when you draw the line under decisions and at what point a decision simply has to be made and moved on will be the crunchy thing going forward. I want to come back to some of what we heard from submitters over the course of the last 24 hours, and I was actually very heartened that overwhelmingly what we heard from the submitters we spoke to, who are the key stakeholders, I guess you could say, in this process, was a sense of positivity and a sense of agreement and collegiality and acceptance of what actually needed to happen. And I think actually you can even read from certainly the Labour Minority Review and the tenor of the Select Committee report that there is a general sense of acceptance that a centralised framework of enhanced powers is absolutely necessary. And I don't think I've heard anything from across the House that suggests that isn't the case. And so that, I think, is a tremendously important point to get on the record, that we do have in this House a very good political consensus around the fact that there needs to be a centralised system of enhanced powers reaching across the Canterbury region if we're going to get the sort of recovery, the sort of timely, focused and involved process that we must have in Canterbury. And let's not forget that. Now, I'm not certainly saying for 1 minute that every submitter thought that everything in the bill was absolutely perfect. They all came with a number of suggestions and comments as to things that could be looked at, and I appreciated that, and a lot of that was very valid information. But the thing that I really respected them for was that even where they thought changes should be made, they approached it in a sense of positive collaboration and constructive input. And that is the absolute tenor that we're going to have to stick with all the way through this. A couple of comments really stuck with me from the Select Committee process, from submitters, the truncated process obviously that it was. One was the submission we heard from Mark Solomon of Ngaitahu, who has already been quoted by Heather Roy in her contribution, who talked about the fact that, yes, these are extraordinary powers, but it is an extraordinary and unprecedented situation. But the other thing he said that I think is worth repeating in this forum is that these are extraordinary powers, but they're not unchecked. They are not unchecked powers. There is actually, sir, a comprehensive system of checks and balances on these powers, and to suggest that it is a carte blanche operation is an absolute farce and would be completely leading people down the right path. There are considerable checks on the exercise of these powers. And what's more, we've had a bit of a almost trial run under the September 4th Response Act, where we've seen the use of this sort of open-ended power. We've seen it work remarkably well, and actually even to the point where the initial critics of that process have been saying, well, actually it has worked pretty well. So we're not going into this blind. We have had a dry run. It's worked very well. And I think that is why we're seeing so many of the stakeholders engaging with us in a constructive way, accepting that this is necessary, and just wanting to talk with us around the edges of that. I do want to just comment on a couple of the points made in the contributions we've heard from around the House this morning, sir. I want to comment on the contribution from Dr. Kennedy Graham, and I'd like to thank Dr. Graham actually for the way he approached the Select Committee process. Obviously we don't agree on a lot of the outcomes on this, but I particularly appreciated the way that Dr. Graham approached the debate in a constructive and professional and polite manner at all times. I certainly appreciated that from him. Dr. Graham talked about, as I understood it, his view was that actually extraordinary powers are only needed in the civil defence response period. And I can't accept that. I can't accept that, sir, because I'm seeing in my communities every day situations where lives and families are at risk because of potential delay. And I mean, just this week I've been working with one constituent in my area who has a family business that they have run for 35 years in a rural community. They were well insured. They had a 12 months loss of business cover, but they are now 7 months into that cover, and they have been still waiting for the consent to get their property demolished, their dangerous red-stickered property demolished so they could begin a rebuild. The owners wanted it demolished, the insurance company wanted it demolished, 2 structural engineers had agreed that it was dangerous and needed to be demolished, and yet since the 4th of September they have been battling to get a demolition consent for no other reason that the resources were simply not there at a local council level to deal with this appropriately. That family is 7 months into this process. They have 5 months left before they face bankruptcy, and the only thing holding them up was the red tape and bureaucracy of the business as usual process. And I can't sit by and watch that business family, that family supporting 2 generations, go into bankruptcy because the bureaucracy isn't set up to say, clearly this has to come down, get it done, bring it down. So, sir, I don't accept that we don't need continued extraordinary powers, and I don't agree with Dr. Graham that actually we can just leave this to council to get on with it. We have 4 councils in this region who have to come together and work together. We have to ensure there is centralised, coordinated powers, and we have to ensure there is a framework of ultimate power that can be exercised if the normal processes don't work. That's what this bill does. That's why I'm supporting this bill. And in the words once more of Mark Solomon from Ngāi Tahu, when we're rebuilding Canterbury, we have to remember that we have to get on with this. We have to do it for us and for our children. And what we know, sir, from all the international evidence, is that a fast rebuild is the best thing for our communities, socially, environmentally, culturally and economically. We have to get on with this. We have to do it well, but we can't afford the delays that business as usual would bring with them. I'm commending the bill to the House.
Speaker, I call the